Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Devereaux, and I just want to say that I randomly picked the number one, so there was no intent to try to ask for your number one vote through that subliminally. I want to thank everyone at Our Revolution for their very thoughtful, thorough, and transparent approach to this forum. It's actually something I'm really looking forward to because the candidates here with us this morning are all, I think, pretty like-minded, so I don't feel like this is an opportunity for us to score points. I feel like it's an opportunity to have a really productive conversation and figure out what your priorities are, where we overlap, and get on the same team, so thank you. I will not start off by comparing myself to Bernie Sanders, except to say that I think neither of us is satisfied with the status quo politically. And that's what brought me into the sphere as someone who is basically not a politician, who started as a community organizer and just was encouraged to run by one of the people here, Dennis Carlone, and also by Nadine Mazin. And so, you know, I feel like, okay, sorry. I feel like I'm a different kind of candidate still, even though last time I was a challenger and was definitely had a challenger's perspective. I think my perspective hasn't changed all that much. I think it's just seasoned by almost 2 years of experience that helps me understand a broader perspective that hasn't changed my principles or my values, but I think it's given me really good background context and a more nuanced approach. Let's see. I've already gotten past my notes, which is good because I don't really need the notes. But anyway, I think as many of you know, I do this as a full-time job, which is certainly not a requirement of the office, but I don't see how anyone really could give it their all, or at least I certainly couldn't without putting in the 70 or 80 hours of work I put in a week. I really pride myself on being super responsive and accessible, being willing to meet with people from all areas, people from all perspectives, even real estate developers. I won't meet with them, I don't take their money, but I can find areas of common interest, and I think it enriches the conversation. So, you know, if you've seen me, watched me at meetings, you know that I arrive on time, prepared, I've done my homework, I ask thoughtful questions. I don't seek to score points. I really am trying to work with my colleagues and figure out how we can move the ball forward. So, you know, I think that's something that Our Revolution is trying to do. You're trying to build a movement. You're trying to build a team. You're looking for people who will listen thoughtfully to your values and arrange their priorities accordingly. So thanks for inviting me.
Hello, my name is Vatsadi Sivangsai, and I want to thank Louise and all the members of Our Revolution for hosting us here today. This isn't my first time in this space. You know, I've tried to come to many of your meetings and try to stay as long as I could. Our 2 to 3 hour meetings can go pretty into the afternoon, but I've always enjoyed them, always enjoyed the conversations and the transparency of the welcoming space that Our Revolution has provided for all types of people. I am Vatsadi Sivangsai. I'm running because I want to bring my diverse experience and perspective in order to increase access to opportunities for all residents and to bring our diverse voices to the table. And as many of you may know, I am a former refugee immigrant. I came over to the US when I was 4.5 years old after living in 2 refugee camps. So from a very, very early age, I knew not just the financial challenges, but future challenges of really just understanding the system and reaching out to people that could possibly help my family and I in giving back to the community. And I did so. I mean, I overcame those challenges, went on to law school, opened up a law practice to help immigrants, small businesses, entrepreneurs, and families. But then after that, I had a really unique opportunity to work directly with diverse communities in Roxbury and Dorchester. As Director of Public Policy, I worked mainly on affordable housing, economic development, and education. And through those diverse experiences and my volunteer experiences, trying to build and provide access to justice and access to opportunities for minority groups and women, I've learned that this is a critical missing piece. The critical missing piece is our diverse voices in City Hall, whether in Cambridge or across the United States. And that's where Our Revolution is a key player, right? You bring the voices of our communities to the forefront in a very transparent way, in a very collaborative way on issues such as affordable housing, income equality, the issue of sustainable living wages, environmental justice, and especially accountability. We need to have leadership that is accountable to the people, whether it is in Cambridge or whether Cambridge is pushing for accountability on the state level or the federal level. We're also wanting accountability to the community and not to just few individuals. Accessibility is key to having this type of accountability. And as mentioned, I have done such a lot of community engagement with immigrant communities, with women, with people of color, with low-income communities, in which very privileged and developers as well. So I want us to work together to bring that diverse voices to the table with a real commitment to working with the people in the community. And I want to bring this for us to collaborate together, fighting for justice and fighting for equitable access to opportunity. I would be so very honored to have your support in knocking on doors, getting out to voters, and your #1 vote.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here. My name is Sumbul Siddiqui. I'm a public interest attorney at a nonprofit by day, and by night I'm running for city council. I'm running because we need dedicated public servants in our local government who can help try and face the challenges our city is facing. I have the lived experience and the professional experience that we need in our elected officials. My story starts in Cambridge, when my family immigrated here from Pakistan. And we were lucky enough to enter the affordable housing system here. I was raised in the Ridge Towers in North Cambridge, and then raised in Roosevelt Towers in East Cambridge, where my parents still live. I attended Cambridge Public Schools all my life. My activism in Cambridge started at an early age, when I co-founded a youth council here, now in its 15th year. The Youth Council continues to be a great platform for young people to get involved. After that, I wanted to pursue an educational path that would empower me, that would make me study my life. And so I went to Brown University and I studied public policy. I got to learn about Head Start. I got to learn about public housing. After that, I returned to Cambridge. I completed a year-long AmeriCorps fellowship here in Cambridge at a nonprofit that's dedicated to improving social mobility for families and children. Again, issues very close to my heart. I then pursued a law degree at Northwestern. I went to law school to better advocate for, similar to Vatsity, for low-income and working-class communities. After that, I returned home to Cambridge. And in Cambridge, since then, I've been active. I've been active as a Human Services Commissioner. I've been active on a few boards. I love this city. I'm very involved. I think that many of the folks here, we share a lot of the same ideas, and we all want to make Cambridge a better place. I think that for me, my service of others is what makes me want to become a member of our city council. We need dedicated public servants in our local government, and that's why I'm here. So I would be really grateful for your support. I love knocking on doors. It's always fun to have more people go, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Here comes Patty Nolan of the school committee.
There's seats here for those that.
Thank you to Sean and to everybody from Our Revolution for having me here today. Jan had mentioned something that I think is really true for all of us here, and something I think is important about not being a politician. I think in local government, everybody starts off because they care deeply about the community, right? And I think that's true of everybody who's in this race. And I think that that's something, this is really the strongest group of candidates in any election that I've ever been a part of. And it bodes well, I think, for the community. So, I think we all came to this in our own way. For me, like Sumbul, I was born and raised in Cambridge. My kids are the 5th generation to live in the same house in Central Square, purchased by my great-grandfather, who was an immigrant, who, after digging graves and doing all kinds of things, became a union iron worker and was able to buy a house that now his great-grandchildren live in. And I know that makes me very lucky, because I have that privilege, and that is what inspired me to become a social worker, where I have worked with children with social emotional needs, trauma, special education. It's what inspired me to run for school committee the first time, because I knew that those students needed more assistance and needed a voice. And it's what inspires me to be on the council. You know, there are two questions that people always get asked when they run are, why are you running and why do you deserve my #1 vote? So I'll do the why am I running now and save the #1 vote pitch for the end. First and foremost, I love this city. I mean, as I said, I've been here my whole life. I went to the public schools here. You know, I see Cambridge as a family. We have our squabbles sometimes, but I truly believe that everybody, whether I'm in agreement with them or they're in agreement with me or not, really cares about each other and cares about this city. So that's one reason why I'm running. The second is social and economic justice. You look at all the prosperity in Cambridge and you probably don't know that we have a higher poverty rate than the state. That on any given night we have 300 plus homeless people on our streets and in our shelters. Or that death by opioid addiction doubled from 13 in 2015 to 26 in 2016, and we're going to surpass 26 by the end of this summer. So we have a lot of work to do if we're going to be the socially and economically just community that we like to say we are. And that is what inspires me. It's what I've dedicated my whole life to. It's what I do every day. And then finally, you know, we're in a crazy time politically. We know that. And it's important that Cambridge, as often touted as the most progressive city in the country, takes the lead in resisting and pushing back against the hatred and the bigotry that's coming out of the White House. And I want to be part of that effort, and I want to lead that effort. So thank you for having me.
Okay, so we now have our visitor from New York. You're down in
Hi, I'm Nadia Komodo, and I'm running for Cambridge City Council. This past year has taught me that living in a community that prioritizes and values social progress and diversity is not something that can be taken for granted. I grew up with quite a bit of uncertainty and instability in my childhood, and Cambridge has always been a safe place my family would return to, regardless of what we had going on at home. It truly became a home even in times when we weren't really sure what that was, or we didn't really have a home to go back to that we felt safe. I'm running for young people to have direct representation and trust in their local government, for families struggling to find and secure affordable housing, and for progress towards more sustainable living. I'm 19 years old and I'm a current sophomore at Harvard College. My background is on nonprofit management and grassroots organizing. I'm the founding executive director of Period, the Menstrual Movement, which is the largest youth-run NGO in women's health now. We have about 110 campus chapters registered at universities and high schools around the U.S. and abroad. We have worked in policy from the local to the federal level to work on things like repealing the sales tax on period products because they're considered a luxury item, trying to encourage food stamps to cover period products, get period products in public restrooms, public schools, and prisons. I started the organization when I was 16 years old after my family experienced what it was like to live without a home of our own. And I was searching for my identity to feel empowered in my voice, coming out of a time that was confusing for me as a teenage girl regarding my privilege, but then also being stuck in an abusive relationship that left me feeling quite powerless. Those experiences that I grew up with have taught me to cherish community, taught me to cherish inclusivity and the feeling of home. And this concept of home is something I want to protect for all Cambridge residents, regardless of their race, their religion, or their socioeconomic status. And I think that the focus for Cambridge over the next 2 years is going to be preserving this economic diversity and protecting our citizens, especially in this national time of uncertainty. It's more important than ever before to unite and take action at a local level. I think that our revolution should endorse me because this whole organization is about revitalizing and reclaiming democracy, making sure that the people representing are representative of the people, and pushing the boundary on what politics is. This is a forward movement of Bernie Sanders movement and call to action of young people. I'm 19 years old. I'm running in a city where 35% of the demographic is under the age of 25, 34% of the adult population is enrolled in the university in some way, yet we have no student or youth representation, and we never have. And if there's any place to elect someone like me who's a ultra-progressive, young candidate with a lot of energy and a lot of passion for the issues the city is facing, I think it should be me, and I really would love to work with you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Santos. I'm a syndicated talk show host. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank Sean and the rest of the folks for coming here on a Saturday morning. It's a beautiful day, and many of you could be somewhere else. But I'm here because, really, I'm running for city council in Cambridge because I was inspired by Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016. I was a part of the campaign as a syndicated talk host. I had him on, and I had his surrogates on, from Nina Turner to several other folks, including Paul Feeney, who was, of course, the campaign manager for Bernie Sanders here in the state, and who I'm going to go down and volunteer for over the next few days. In his race, you guys have endorsed him. I'm a grandson of Portuguese immigrants from Portugal. I am a person who was the first in my family to go to college, and the Bernie Sanders message to rescue all, not just those in the 1% and 2%, is why I'm running. Neighborhoods first, concerned about affordable housing. I have a rent to own because I want to keep people here in Cambridge. This is a great community. I came here from Washington in 2005, settled in North Cambridge, and I live in East Cambridge, because Cambridge can make a difference. It can lead. After working as a DC bureau chief in Washington for several years, and before that a Democratic political consultant, I can tell you that you need progressive leadership. People have been yearning for Bernie Sanders, and now they're yearning for our revolution. We don't want to go back. We don't want to settle. That's why there are 3 candidates now running for governor here in Massachusetts, where 4 years ago, single-payer health care was an extreme. Today, all 3 Democratic governors are for single-payer health care. That's because of Bernie Sanders. That's because of our revolution. And the fact that it could go to California and become law there, we'll see what happens. I want to be part of that fight. I believe that if you look at the issues from affordable housing to the MBTA and reform, I worked very closely with former Governor Michael Dukakis on ways to sort of take the red line, actually get people to and fro where they're not actually getting out of the station car, and obviously not being able to get to work. I have a quick interview here with Bernie Sanders that I did, and I'd like to play that right now. Well, Senator, you know, one of the things that we have talked about on the show, and you're highlighting in your campaign, is the need to take care of the American worker. And now, more than ever, when jobs will be lost, when governments will, foreign governments will have complete autonomy to do what they want.
I'm sorry, but we're up, so we're going to have to move along.
All right.
But thank you very much. Gwen, you're up. Thank you.
My name is Gwen Volmar. I'm a candidate for City Council. I'm a candidate also for your endorsement this morning. I met a woman the other night who told me that she couldn't vote for me because she had to move. And the reason for that was because Google had just come to her landlord and offered $500 a month on top of the regular rent for that apartment to be the exclusive use of Google employees. You cannot, no single person can compete with a multinational corporation, nor should we have to. And it's not just Google. Harvard has just offered its long-term residents, my neighbors, $20,000 to move out. My neighbor's response to that was, what am I gonna do with $20,000 in Cambridge? There are people here who are hanging on by their fingernails. People for whom a $20,000 check would still not make Cambridge livable. We have the ability collectively to stand up to the rising economic tide, but we have to do so with courage and creativity, and that's why I am so passionate about finding solutions that are outside of the typical talking points, because we know how strong the incentives are for corporations to be creative, and our incentives have to be just as strong. And the people with the biggest incentives to fight hard are the ones with skin in the game. I have had the conversation with my partner where we had to give up meals out. I have had the conversation where we had to give up vacations. And I have had the conversation with my partner where we have said, if we want to live in Cambridge, then we can't afford children. That is the kind of genuine experience that buys you skin in the game. For that reason, when I look at the rising rent crisis in Cambridge, I am not only measuring it in dollars and cents, but I am measuring it in meals lost, and vacations lost, and families lost, and I am not the only one. My entire campaign team is working day and night without being paid a cent because they have skin in the game. And I have met hundreds of people like them who are being energized for the first time by a candidate who has experience like theirs. If you want to know why I should be an OR endorsee, it's because OR is about overlooked voters and is about bringing issues to the fore that are overlooked but actually genuinely have broad support. We need someone in City Council who has genuine experience and skin in the game. We need somebody in that room whose life is on hold until we figure these things out, and that person is me. Thank you for having me.
Hi, my name is Quentin Zondervan, and I'm a first-time candidate for City Council. Thank you all for holding this event. It's really great to be here with so many friends and such great candidates. I grew up in Suriname in South America, which is covered 90% in rainforest. When I was 10 years old, a military strongman took over the country, and it became a dictatorship. I saw the destruction of the press, killing of prominent citizens, and I was personally threatened by the dictator's soldiers, causing my dad to send me ahead to the United States when I was 15 years old. As a result of these experiences, I deeply cherish the freedom and democracy that we have here in America. As a college student, I became aware of the massive environmental destruction that we are causing, and I became a lifelong climate activist. I am a democratic socialist, and like Bernie, I believe that campaigns should be financed by the people. So I am not accepting donations from real estate developers or other special interests. I moved to Cambridge in 1992 to study at MIT, and I fell in love with the city and with my wife. We bought a home in the Port, and we are raising our kids there. They're both at CRLS this fall. It's a very crowded field, and among the many challengers, I'm the most experienced in working with the community, with the city council, and the city administration on municipal policy. Some of my major accomplishments include nearly a decade of service on the Climate Protection Action Committee, which I chaired for 3 years. I co-founded 2 nonprofits, including Green Cambridge and the Climate Action Business Association. And I co-authored the Net Zero petition with Mike Connolly, who we elected to the State House 1 year ago yesterday, and who has endorsed my candidacy. Given the lack of competent leadership at the national level, it's more important than ever that we take bold action here at the local level. My priorities are affordable housing, bicycle and pedestrian safety, and of course, climate change. In 2015, I was an observer to the Paris negotiations. So of course, I was very disappointed when Trump pulled us out of the Paris Agreement. But I've always known that we can take action locally and that we must. As we can see from the hurricanes, we're all in danger, including here in Cambridge. We just completed the climate vulnerability study, which I advocated for, and we need to make sure that climate change is incorporated into our plan. The plans are set. Now we need to elect people like me to the council to make sure that they are implemented. Thank you.
Thank you. I welcome everybody here, and I think it's a great honor to speak to you. I should tell you I have an iron fist, so I'm going to hold on to the microphone. No, I'm kidding. I've been blessed and in my life, and I've always given back in kind. My parents come from very humble backgrounds and broken families, and they focus their attention on their 3 kids. I'm the first in my family to go to college, like Jeff. I received scholarships along the way. I'm blessed. I love what I do as a community architect, urban designer, and now city councilor. It's all the same to me. Each phase of my life, public, private, focuses on promoting the common good, the public good. My record speaks for itself. I mentored and sponsored disadvantaged school children in Cambridge for 18 years through the Say Yes to Education program. I'm helping and have helped 14 neighborhood groups on their zoning and design review projects. I've helped small business owners think about getting taxes reduced, getting recycling taken care of by the city, helping them. They are the core of many neighborhoods. I've helped families remain in the city. I know how to work with diverse groups. That's my training. How do you bring people together?
What policies would you implement to ensure youth and low-income residents are consulted in the process of addressing income inequality in Cambridge? Do you need me to repeat that? What policies would you implement to ensure youth and low-income residents are consulted in the process of addressing income inequality in Cambridge?
Thank you.
Well, as an urban design architect, we have learned that neighbors are the experts. Bringing in experts from the outside usually doesn't get to the core of the issue. It might be good advice. So what we have done is insisting that the city, mostly community development, works with neighbors. As the head of the ordinance committee, where all zoning is approved, we've empowered neighbors to become participants. I mentioned earlier that I've been working with 14 different neighborhood groups to gain their input and help them solve their problems. So it's the same thing. You have to, pressure's probably too strong of a word, encourage all city staff and the councilors, of course, to reach out, gain the information, gain the support. I can't tell you how often a good urban design works because of neighborhood support. When we did the East Cambridge Riverfront Plan, everything they asked for, this is in the early 70s, everything they asked for got incorporated into the plan. And it was reasonable stuff. And it's the same thing with this. And inequality on every level is what is essential. At MIT, we are telling them before they get any zoning, they have to have a job training policy that works with the surrounding neighborhoods. We have other requirements as well, beyond what zoning is. So you use every tool you have to gain what you want to gain. And I think there are many things that the Cambridge can do, as well as the pre-primary education. My thesis was in pre-primary education to get kids early, to get more affordable housing. I'm the first guy to push that the budget actually include a line item for affordable housing. It is not for over 10 years. To have a master plan that deal with all the social issues. First master plan in 50 years. I was the guy that pushed that through. So there's a record of focusing on those in greatest need. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is for Quentin. Quentin, please elaborate on your ideas about municipal progressive taxes and how you would leverage funds raised to address issues facing Cambridge.
Thank you. What we've seen in the last few decades in this country is rising inequality. The inequality now economically is the worst ever, except just before the Great Depression. So What's the difference? What's changed? Well, it's taxes. Back in the 50s, we had very high top marginal taxes and lots for their jobs. That's a losing proposition. Now, of course, in the city, it actually used to be that about 100 years ago, cities and municipalities raised most of the revenues, and the federal and state governments didn't actually raise so much money. But that's completely flipped around, and our taxation powers have actually been significantly reduced. We now have to go back to the state to ask for more funding. Cambridge has one of the lowest property tax rates in the entire state. We were one of the first to do the Community Preservation Act, which is a surcharge on our property taxes that we use for historical preservation, green space preservation, and affordable housing. So one of the things that we could consider is to elaborate on that kind of policy where we add a surcharge to our property taxes and use that money for specific purposes. Another example that we could use the money for is to publicly finance our campaigns so that we don't, as candidates, all have to spend so much time trying to raise money from our friends. Those are just a couple of ideas that we could experiment with. We also can do voluntary taxes for our parking permits, for example. We actually have the ability to pay extra if we would like, and those funds all go to our climate mitigation efforts, including reducing vehicle miles traveled. So we do have opportunities in Cambridge to do more progressive taxation and use those revenues for community benefits.
So Gwen, the next question is for you. Please elaborate on your proposal to encourage the MBTA to compete with ride-sharing services, to compete with ride-sharing services, including your ideal implementation timeline and financing options.
So I spend a lot of my time with young people. I work with university students all the time. And one thing that being surrounded by people between 18 and 22 has taught me is that they will seek out efficiency wherever they can find it. They do not have time to do extra labor, to do extra paperwork. And so when something like Uber or Lyft came along and offered a little bit of extra efficiency, something that was convenient for them, they jumped on board, to the detriment of all of our local taxi companies, which are regulated and handled by the state, by the MBTA. So I very much would like to see the MBTA, the state, move back into that space to protect workers and institutions that we can actually regulate, because that's how we keep people safe. The way that we can do that would be by doing things like actually equipping our taxi drivers with the kind of functionality that makes Uber and Lyft so effective. This is not rocket science in terms of implementing this kind of technology. It's the reason that little startups can do this kind of thing, is they are interrupting the market because we have become so comfortable with the current model of taxi service that it's pretty easy for some enterprising young people to come in with a slight change that makes things slightly more convenient, and everybody jumps on board. So I genuinely believe that it wouldn't take a lot of money to develop the technology to deploy so that our taxi drivers actually have GPS in their cars, so that when you call a taxi, you can see exactly who's coming to pick you up. You can watch as they come and drive up so that you don't feel like you're getting into a strange car. That's what scares me about Uber, is that I don't know who is coming and I don't necessarily know what car it's going to be, but a taxi is labeled and it will keep our bicyclists safe on the road. Additionally, our bicyclists are concerned that they can't identify Uber drivers and they can't see when an Uber driver is going to be driving erratically because they're camouflaged. So I am so strongly committed to maintaining our state institutions so that we can regulate them and keep everyone on the road safe.
Okay. Thank you very much. And our next question is for Jeff. Jeff, you've advocated strongly for rent-to-buy mandates. Can you elaborate a bit on this approach and discuss how you might avoid any pitfalls that could arise?
Thank you. First of all, I'm a renter. So I understand, as a middle-aged guy, that not everyone can own in Cambridge as currently orchestrated. It is ridiculous that people in my neighborhood, I live on 3rd Street, live in homes that, fortunately for them, they inherited. But the fact is that it's a small place for $700,000. Now, think about this. Cambridge wants to have diversity. Cambridge wants to have people who come from all parts of the world. Great Harvard and MIT and all the other great reasons you come to Cambridge. They come, they put themselves in 3 bedrooms, if you can find one of those, and you have a roommate, and then after a while that gets pretty annoying. So what do? You move. First you move to Somerville, and that's not going very well because they're also raising their rent. Then you move to Medford or Malden, or some people, I just found out, are moving up to Billerica. Now just think about that. We are having people who come here for a purpose, for a reason, who love the progressive values of Cambridge, and they cannot afford to stay here. So my idea with rent to own is this. We have a great example and a great opportunity with Volpe. We can allow them to have the ability to be close to the MBTA, Kendall Square, I live across the street from the Volpe Center. Or we can say, this is what we want. 20% affordable rate, affordable housing. On top of that, we want 1 floor, and this is a start, for rent to own. Think about the benefits. The people who own the building now get a tenant who is there because they own the unit. Secondly, we have more property taxes. And third, we now begin the revolution to begin to be able to keep people in the city. That's how I plan to do it. Is there going to be a fight? Sure. Is there going to be a hard fight? Yes. But that's why I'm here. I'm fighting for Cambridge families. Thank you.
Do we have questions for?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're now going to turn to our online candidate, and I will read the question. Okay. So, Nadia, you articulated that some solutions to local problems involve creating public-private partnerships, particularly with universities. Are there some inherent dangers in that approach, and how would you address them?
One of the core pillars of my policy platform is pushing for more community-minded university relations. And this is anything from pushing for universities to give back to the community in terms of access to arts and culture, access to opportunities to learn at these institutions, or access to even technology for students here. I think that there's a great need for that one, especially when it comes to leveling the playing field amongst students, especially at the high school level at Cambridge Ridge and Latin. And this goes all the way to pushing universities to think about how they're building, quite literally in Cambridge as well. When you look at the next 2 years, the biggest decisions around real estate happen to be with universities. We're looking at the Volpe site, which is going to be the largest tower in Cambridge, adding about over 1,400 new units of residential and commercial spaces. And we're also looking at new energy for graduate students, mobilizing, pushing universities to house more graduate students. And there's already a petition that we're seeing that they're trying to embed with the Volpe site. And so when you look at affordable housing, which is one of the most one of the biggest challenges in Cambridge right now. I truly see an opportunity to work with the universities, because if you push universities to meet 100% of the demand for graduate students, that doesn't mean housing all the graduate students or forcing graduate students to live in university-owned housing, but meeting the demand, because the demand is there for quality and affordable, either at or below market rate housing for graduate students. You would open up maybe over 10,000 units that are currently short-term rentals that could be longer-term solutions for Cambridge families. And so, as you can see, I think there's a plethora of opportunity all the way from universities giving back because they are the most well-endowed institutions in the world for academia, and they're constantly innovating in the spirit of urban planning and sustainability and climate change preparedness, and those are all things Cambridge could benefit in, and that the universities haven't taken a step to give back to the community in yet, or giving back tangible resources to students and youth here, all the way to being a part of city planning. I think that there is the danger of going into this and knowing that they are nonprofits, they consider themselves separate from the community, but I have this fundamental relationship with universities as a member of the student body, as someone who is in the community, and we've seen student mobilization makes a difference. And I want to be part of that, and I want to help lead that partnership.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. And
Question.
oh, I'm just going to give you the mic.
No, you need
The question.
I need the mic. Sorry. I think you can hear me. I'm worried about Mark. Okay, so since your term in office, Cambridge has continued to gentrify at an alarming rate. Why has that happened, and what would you do in the future to prevent it?
Well, this isn't something that's happening just in Cambridge, right? This is not just a Cambridge problem. But we'll talk specifically about Cambridge. Cambridge is thriving, right? When you look at our demographics historically, they really run parallel to the types of industry that we've had in the city. When we were a farming community, we looked one way. When we had a manufacturing community where my grandmother and her sisters worked the assembly line at lower paying jobs, we looked another way. Now we're biotech and innovation, and we're looking a different way. And people want to come and live here for all the same reasons we want to live here. And we're not going to put a wall around Cambridge the way an evil person wants to put a wall at our border. So people with money are going to continue to move into the city, whether you want them to or not, right? As long as we're a thriving city. So what we have to do is we have to look at how we can offer affordable housing opportunities to keep lower income residents here. And it's not just about affordable housing, it's about wages, right? It's about early childhood education. It's about making sure that we have jobs here. One of the things that we're looking at is we have this thing called incentive zoning, which we might go into later, but one of the things that I've asked the city to look into is it's a requirement that's put on commercial developers, businesses who come into the city. I want to know if we can put a requirement in that they have to hire a certain percentage of Cambridge residents. Boston does something similar to that. Right? We could look at that so that we can help get, especially some of these young people who are living in the shadows of Kendall Square that can't access that economy, get them into that economy, and then by that help them earn more money and be able to live here. So, you're not going to stop, the Massachusetts, the Metro Boston report card, housing report card says there's two ways that you control rents in your city. You either build enough housing to reach a 5.5% vacancy rate, or you make your city an undesirable place to live, right? Holyoke is cheap. There's a reason Holyoke is cheap, because there are no jobs, schools are in receivership, there are no city services. I don't want to be Holyoke. But it's about how do we find a balance where we can continue to maintain our economy so that we can fund all the things that the people in this room want us to fund, but also not force lower income residents out. It is the big nut we have to crack, and it's something I've been working on for 4 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Sumbul. Please explain what you would do to make the City Council more accessible and transparent to residents of Cambridge, particularly non-English speaking and low-income residents.
So I can draw from my personal experience on this. My mom has lived here for quite a long time. Her first election was voting for Hillary in the presidential election, the first time she ever voted. And there's many people like my mom who just don't know why it's important to get involved. What on the local level, what policies are actually affecting individuals on a day-to-day basis. So one of the ideas is doing more outreach to communities in areas like the Ridge Towers. We have great community rooms there. We have great youth centers. We have great senior centers. We should, as city councilors, be going to these areas and talking to people. And I think that's why it's so important to elect individuals who reflect these communities, so we can build, more communication. And as far as the language barrier, we should be offering, and we do a good job, but we could do better. But offering more services in different languages. We have a really multicultural community here. Our low-income residents are immigrants from so many countries. We can offer child care services. That's a big dilemma for folks. They want to bring their children somewhere to a meeting, they have nowhere to go. So we have to concretely think about the bottlenecks that get people to engage, and then engage them, and say, look, there's this law that we're passing. For example, if we were to create some kind of job feeder program, we'd want to go to the housing authorities, to talk to folks. I can't tell you how many times I've met people who are so shocked that, I came from the Ridge Towers and I came from, public housing in Cambridge and have now become an attorney. They're like, oh, good for you, right? We need less of good for yous, and we have to make it more common that everyone from low-income, working-class families can achieve, and I think it starts with our local government being more representative.
Okay, Vassity, you worked in the Boston City Council, worked in Boston City Councilor Tito Jackson's office. What, if anything, has Boston done that Cambridge could and should do to address housing and helping economically disadvantaged residents?
I love this question because it was a very challenging period working in Boston. Boston being one of the most polarized, segregated city in the country, and the suppression of minority communities is way worse than what we see. So every single day I went home and I thought it was like an awesome, rewarding experience. But every single day I worked on issues where, the landlord, it's illegal, it's a criminal act, kicked out an immigrant who was on a green card, and all he needed was his green card to get a job. And the landlord just kicked him out. He showed up in my office to ask for help. And with my legal expertise, I, kind of generally guided him, but because I wasn't, legally I couldn't give him more advice than the general stuff, I connected him with a legal attorney. But what Boston has done really, really well is that, especially in Tito's office, is he did work with institutions. He did work with small businesses. As a city councilor, he really got all of his employees, us and his staff, all the community leaders together in one room. And we did it through a partnership with MIT. See, MIT isn't even part of Boston, but it's like so involved. So why aren't we leveraging that? Why aren't we leveraging Harvard or Leslie with childcare? There's all of these really awesome opportunities in Cambridge, and we're not doing it. But Boston's doing it. And what they did and what we did was we worked with students, saved millions of dollars because these students that we have.
I'm going to stand up because I'm feeling a little scrunched in the corner here.
I'm so sorry.
And because everybody else has already answered all the hard questions, I'll take this one. my sympathies go out, obviously, to the people of Houston, and I
Are motivated for the right reasons and are in this because they can empathize with a lot of the challenges of the community, specifically affordable housing and income inequality. I think that it should be more accessible to not only run, but run a winning campaign in this municipal race. And I hope that along the campaign trail, we are not living in a system that pushes candidates to spend hours upon end on the phone fundraising or having to make decisions on who they're taking money from, but instead pushing them to think about who they're serving, why they're serving, and trying to listen to constituents as much as possible. For very personal reasons, I also feel strongly about this because I am a candidate who is someone who is running because I feel very strongly about these issues, and I am prioritizing my time to spend talking to as many constituents as possible, which is why my evenings from 4 to 8 p.m., 1 to 6 p.m. on weekends is taken up by canvassing and talking to thousands of constituents, knocking on hundreds of doors a day, asking people what they care about. And those are the conversations I want to be having with Cambridge residents. I want to be asking them, what do you care about? Why do you care about it? What do you think the city council could be doing better to support you? Not asking them for money. And, I'm running against other candidates who are able to call their friends and call the people you know. Every political consultant will just say, call the people you know, and ask for money. And the people I know are young people who barely have a source of income. My family is we're low income. I work multiple jobs. Last year I had to work 6. This year I'm working 3 to try to support my family. And I think that we want to be electing people regardless of their socioeconomic status and representing people regardless of their socioeconomic status. I'm not taking any money from special interest or development dollars, and I seriously hope that, my...
Sorry, time.
We are nothing but fair here.
Sorry. I'm going to choose economic inequality. Look, folks, we had this debate in the primary, with Senator Sanders, and I think that fact is it all revolves around economics. Yes, there is racial inequality, and that mixes with it. It also affects where we invest and how we affect climate change. And I agree with Jan on the issue of public financing. Why do we have to run every 2 years? Why can't we run every 4 years? Same thing should happen in the U.S. House of Representatives, so members of Congress don't have to go and raise money half the day and then spend only half the day actually doing the people's business. Economic inequality means investing in us. I'm a neighborhood's first candidate. So that means investing in making sure that we have small businesses that are staying there. Use historic trust funds to keep those businesses, mom and pops, there. Looking at single-payer health care. That is, again, not money from Cambridge, but money from around the country to be able to support health care for everybody. This is not rocket science. It's been going on in Europe and Australia for years. America's got to get up, and Cambridge has to lead. But the piece that I feel is so important is that we need to have Cambridge lead. Cambridge is the most progressive city in the state. If Cambridge doesn't lead, if Cambridge says, well, it's going to be difficult to do all this, then the state won't do it. So that's why it's time for Cambridge to lead. And I feel, as an advocate on a talk show that is not only aired here but across the country, I can bring the Our Revolution message of economic inequality on a number of different levels. 4 years of free public university. Yes, Harvard and MIT are great if you can afford to get into it. If you get a scholarship, great. What about the idea of students who can't afford that? All of these issues are critical if we're going to have a democracy that lasts. And talking about every issue you possibly can imagine. It all comes down to economics. And I say the theory here is invest in us. Invest in middle class and working class America. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about economic inequality. So when I came to Cambridge, I was really broke. I had been working all summer long as a teacher without pay, and it was very clear. I had credit card debt. My partner and I had student loan debt. We did not realize that Harvard does not take taxes out of your stipend. And so we found ourselves with quite a bill in April, and we did not have the money to pay it. So we paid in quarterly installments. We paid off our credit card debt in quarterly installments. There was a safety net for us. In contrast, a friend of mine was having trouble paying her rent, and so she was forcibly evicted, and her belongings were moved to a storage unit that cost $300 a month. Well, if you're having trouble paying your rent, you probably don't have $300 a month to pay for a storage unit. On top of that, if you don't have money to pay first and last month's rent on your next apartment, and you don't have the recommendation of your previous landlord, you are not going to find another apartment. You are homeless. There is no safety net for that person. I have been to the housing fair. I have seen how many housing organizations exist. There are dozens, and if I struggle to understand what each of their role is and how they work with each other, if you are struggling to pay your bills, if you have 3 or 4 jobs, there is no way you're going to be able to navigate that kind of Byzantine procedure. There is no safety net for that person. I am advocating for really the least that we can do for these people. Something like a safekeeping center where if you're homeless, you can have a small locker where you can keep some of your valuable items and a mailing address. Because when you're homeless and you don't have an address, you can't have a bank account, you can't have a job, you can't have an apartment, and you can't vote. This is the least that we can do to set up a small safety net for the people who experience the most economic inequality. We are absolutely not treating them equally. There is a safety net for me, and there is not for everyone else.
So I'm going to say something radical. Everything's connected. Of course, you're expecting me to talk about climate change, so I will. But it's all connected. When Mike and I filed the net zero petition 4 years ago, it's because 80% of our emissions that cause climate change in Cambridge are from our buildings. So that's directly connected to housing and to jobs. We have opportunities to address all of these issues at once. There's a development in Central Square called Vale Court. It's an opportunity for the city of Cambridge to not only make that 100% affordable housing, which I know that Mark and many on the council support, but also to make it net zero, so that we actually do justice to the people who are going to live there by lowering their utility bills preemptively, right? It's an opportunity to add some green space to the city, which helps mitigate the urban heat island effect. Of course, we're very concerned with climate change about flooding and storms and hurricanes. They're very spectacular. But one of the big threats to us here in Cambridge is actually heat, just high temperatures for many days in a row. And one of the ways that we can address that is through air conditioning. Well, air conditioning uses up lots of energy. So we have to do renewable energy so that we're not making the problem worse. All of these things are connected. One of the things that I've been working on the last few years is community solar. When we do a community solar project, we just did the first one in Davis Square, we can offer 100% solar electricity to community members at a discount. People are paying 10% less than they're paying Eversource because we do that project. So we're able to do economic justice and climate justice and social justice at the same time. When we talk about racial inequality, well, why is there a disparity among people of different racial backgrounds? Because of hundreds of years of discrimination, right? Which perpetuates through our economic system. So all of these issues are related, and the smart way to do this is to keep that in mind when we design solutions so that we're not solving one problem and making another one worse.
Well, I was going to suggest that all these issues are related, but clearly my friend saw my notes. I'm going to choose affordable housing in part because no one else did, and this is my experience. We need a holistic approach, just like with every one of the other issues. It isn't just one thing will solve everything. We need zoning reform. When we redid the zoning of Central Square, I added that a requirement was to get the maximum density, half the new development had to be housing. The same thing should be for every other square in the city. Housing generates, not just affordable housing, it generates a healthier community. Retail is reinforced. Requiring dorms be built by the universities. We told MIT 3 months ago that was one of the 3 requirements to get their zoning approved, and I'm happy with what's happening around that. The master plan, the reason we pushed that was in large part because of affordable housing, the inequality, the sustainability. It turns out that if you build housing at 7 stories or lower, the cost is 1/3 less than building it above 7 stories because of fire codes and other things. Why are we allowing buildings above that? Because the net result is rents go up for everybody, including the affordable to some extent. And special permit criteria. We give out special permits, but there are conditions people are to meet. As was alluded to earlier, there's no reason why those requirements can't be broader. I've worked on 2,000 mixed unit housing, mixed units. Of that, 500 were at low income. I know what it takes to make a low income development work. It's neighborhood. It's not just the units, it's what you do, the surrounding neighborhood and what you create. And that has to be important. The other last thing is you hear, well, we want to do housing, but office would be so much more profitable. Our mixed-use zoning is either or. Mixed-use zoning should be and. Housing and, if you want, office. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, and I want to thank you all for...
Thank you. I'm going to stand up on the chair so you see me. No, I won't do that. So Cambridge prides itself on being a welcoming and diverse leader, as Jeff mentioned, that serves as a model community for people outside of Cambridge. You all know that. But we need a vision for the future of the city that forces us to live up to those values. That's why I push for the master plan. So specific examples of policies or goals that I want to achieve is funding for programs in the face of Trump threats. Fortunately, the city manager has already said we're going to do that. Environmental and housing sustainability, safe streets for everyone, publicly financed campaigns. We all know we have to work together as a community. Cambridge does a lot of good for its citizens, but it can do more, especially for those in the missing middle and underprivileged who need it the most. Listen to what the people want. As I said before, neighbors are the experts. I realize you're surrounded by 9 good people. I hope all 9 get on the council. That would change the city for the better. Your endorsement would help me demonstrate and spread the word about how my unique experience and expertise in urban design, planning, zoning, local government bolsters your progressive community-focused vision and our revolution's policy goals. Yet I came in 8th both times in the election, and there's no worse feeling than being at the bottom. It's great, but oh my God, what's going to happen next time? Please vote number 1 for Dennis Carlone on November 7th. Thank you for your time and interest. I would be very proud to receive your endorsement.
Thanks everyone for organizing this great event. I've really enjoyed it. It's been the most transparent endorsement process in this campaign. I really appreciate it. I voted for Bernie in the primary. I'm a strong supporter of the People's Platform. In fact, earlier this week, I was in Catherine Clark's office with some fellow OR members to advocate for the People's Platform. Specifically, I spoke on DACA as well as the Keep It in the Ground Act to stop our exploitation of fossil fuels. When we filed the net zero petition, we had the support of many people in the room here, and Mike Connolly did a fantastic job organizing everyone and making it happen. That allowed us to change the conversation from it's impossible to let's do it. Today, the city has hired a full-time net zero planner who's implementing the plan. I've spoken with groups across the state. Concord, Lexington, Bedford, Brookline are all modeling their net zero policies now after what we were able to do here in Cambridge. And that means we can take action here in Cambridge and use that to transform what we're doing in the state and even in the nation. And that's why the city council race is so important. With 3 open seats, it is a great opportunity to elect a more progressive council so that we can make more progress on our platform right here in Cambridge and then throughout the nation. So I humbly ask not just for your #1 vote, but for you to join our campaign, to knock on doors, to do what we did for Mike last fall, and get many of us here elected so that we can make a difference for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me. When I think about the hard decisions that I know that city councilors have to make, those are nothing compared to the hard decisions that I know that our residents are making. The friend that I had just told you about, I had a conversation with her the other day where she was deciding between putting her little money toward saving for a deposit on an apartment and buying back her parents' ashes from the eviction authorities. I have been grieving all week with my students who are on DACA about the results of a decision that was made years ago. I am advocating for simple, small-scale kinds of solutions that build consensus. If we're putting GPS onto taxis, that is a small-scale, simple solution. Our buses already have GPS, you may not know. Our municipal broadband network already has a fiber backbone. We just need to replace the rest of the copper with fiber. These are small-scale solutions that build consensus. Many of you will remember being at the convention, all of the OR amendments. The only one that failed was the housing amendment, which had so many wonderful, wonderful planks because it failed because of one divisive plank. There was no conversation about all of the nuances of the rest of the planks. It was because we spent all of our time in vitriolic debate about one of them. I am advocating instead getting away from divisiveness and looking at simple solutions that are already in place in other places in the country that will build consensus both within the city council and in our city. Thank you very much for having me. I hope that you vote Gwen #1 on November 7th and for your endorsement.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Thanks to Sean McFarland and to all those at Our Revolution. As I said, I'm inspired by Bernie Sanders and why I decided to run. As I said, I do a talk show that I believe has advocated the policies of Bernie. But I'm always looking to bring people together. As I said, it's neighborhoods first. I've been endorsed by 8 labor unions. Now, those are working class men and women from all different sectors. But what it is that they have all worked and have been part of my show as contributors and so forth. I have worked to bring people together, the Blue-Green Alliance, a lot of those labor folks, the Sierra Club, we've had events that have been involved. I was the first host to have both Reverend Jackson and Governor Dukakis on my show at the same time together. We actually developed that going forward. I believe if your heart is in the right place, if you feel that you want to make a difference, if you feel that you have an opportunity as a government official to help citizens, not to line your pockets, not to be a star, but to basically help people. And I believe I can help people. I believe I can help those who want the Bernie Sanders message, both in government and outside of government, as a talk show host. I ask for your endorsement. I ask you to help, and I appreciate you spending time with me today. Thank you. We gotta, oh, Jesus, sorry.
I want to close off by saying that I'm not only applying to this endorsement because I want your support or I want your votes. That would be great come November 7th, but I'm applying for this endorsement because I truly believe in the mission of our revolution, of setting new precedents in politics through a progressive agenda, pushing for the bounds on what it means to be a politician or what politics is, reclaiming and revitalizing democracy. And I think that when I take all of those components of the mission, I see it very closely aligning with my campaign. This campaign is there are other people, other constituents, other candidates who will look at us and say, great that you're running, so cool, but you're 19 and you're a student. And I say, yes, but that's like a pretty significant portion, almost 35%, that you're discounting if you're saying that I'm too young or I don't have enough life experience, because I have work experience and I have the personal experience that make me really passionate and really strongly be able to empathize with a lot of the needs of the community. And when I think about all of that together, I see that our mission, and my mission on my campaign, but also your mission as our revolution, really closely align. And I'm applying for this endorsement not only to work through Election Day, but I really want to be able to work with this group moving forward. Hopefully I can work with you guys in the capacity as a city councilor to be able to continue to mobilize and push forward a progressive agenda in city council, especially doing things around closing the income equality gap, leveling the playing field for employment and educational opportunities. I want this to be an ongoing partnership. I don't see this stopping on November 7th because that's election day. I see this as a partnership of continuing to push this glass ceiling forward, continuing to try to bring voice and a seat to the table for a demographic that hasn't had a seat at the table before. And that includes young people, that includes people who are from backgrounds that aren't, always wanting to.
I'm sorry. It's fine.
2 minutes?
Two.
So, a lot of folks have talked about why they deserve the endorsement of our revolution because they voted for Bernie, or they know Bernie, or in Dennis's case, look like Bernie. Well, he said it first. I wasn't going to go there. But I think my connection to our revolution is different than that. I think it's about, because what I think our revolution is social and economic justice and taking concrete action to make a difference. And that's what we are really closely aligned. So let's talk about, when that man in the White House, started to wage his war on immigrants. A lot of people talked about, this is terrible, this is terrible. What did I do? I filed a policy order recommitting our status as a sanctuary city and asked the manager to start planning on how to fund any budget cuts that were going to come from the White House. I appointed Manny Lasardi as my immigrant liaison to work with people on the ground who were struggling and being threatened by the president. That was so successful that I advocated with the city manager to get $133,000 in the budget to make that a full-time city position. So it doesn't lie in a volunteer position or in the vice mayor's office, but the city will have this moving forward to help immigrants. When homelessness, we were entering our 10th year of our plan to end homelessness, and we weren't really making much progress, I pulled Boston, Cambridge, Somerville, Medford, and Malden together for a year-long discussion on how we can address homelessness on a regional basis. Concrete action that's making a difference in people's lives. $15 minimum wage. I co-chaired the committee in Cambridge that looked at how can we get a $15 minimum wage in Cambridge. And we've heard about collaboration and all this divisiveness on the city council. This is hard work, and making the sausage is difficult. And we're all passionate, and there are going to be times where we're not going to agree. And that's okay, and we're going to get passionate about it. But I have filed major policy initiatives with every other member of the city council. Nobody else can say that. I know how to bring people together to get things done. That's what I think our revolution is about. That's what I'm about, and I ask for your #1 vote on November 7th.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. I'm really excited to be here today. I want to say that Cambridge has made me who I am, and I'm really proud of that. I understand the challenges that our residents face when attempting to rent or purchase a home, to raise children and run businesses. I understand the values we share: access to housing, job security, inclusion, and quality education. We have to match our values to our work. At a time of such national uncertainty, we have to do great work here. We have to. That's what my campaign is about. I'm a dedicated public servant, committed to Cambridge, and I have the qualifications to serve as a member on the City Council. As a city, we have to reflect on where we've come from to shape our way forward in the future. And I'm aware of the city's amazing resources because I've benefited from them firsthand. I've benefited from public housing, from our quality education, and the thriving affordable housing policy, to have better community development policies, and so forth. This is not going to be easy, as Mark said, but we have to work every day